From Doylestown, welcome. Oh, and David, it's great to see you back. We always appreciate your jumping across the river. So we got a couple Philly area folks here. Thank you. Whoops, a few more people popping in. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. And as you see folks doing in the chat, please feel free to drop your name in, say hello, let us know where you're coming from, and if you've judged before or you're a first timer. Always helpful to know kind of where people are coming from and where to do more explaining. Great little Monmouth County representing, Atlantic County representing. This is a great way to get to know more about our state. So I always enjoy seeing the range of where people are coming from. Great turnout so far. And there is Steph. Oh, another second Jenkintown, another and a historian with Department of the Army. Wonderful. And in North Plainfield, terrific. Welcome. Happy to see you. Hi, Steph. Happy to see you. Great. I'm just going to give a minute or two more before we begin and get my slides ready. Christina Myers. Great. Hi, Bob. Welcome. Glad you're jumping in. Christina, great to see you. Returning once more. Terrific. 18 years. That's pretty impressive from Jacqueline. Thank you for coming back once again. Terrific. There's Shannon. Great. And people popping in, popping in. Welcome. David, welcome. First time. Glad to see you. Charles, social studies teacher and principal. Wonderful. Um, Thank you. Oh, and terrific doing this with the Amistad Commission, one of our great partners. Welcome. Hi, everybody. All right, we're just coming around to the top of the hour. I'm going to put my screen up to share and we'll get rolling here just in a moment. Um, y'all give me a thumbs up if you see that orientation slide. Thank you. Good. Always good to do a double check. Great. So it's now 6 p.m. And hello, everybody. I'm Michelle Moon. I'm the state coordinator for New Jersey History Day, which means I essentially serve the program throughout the state and coordinate with our campus hosts and our judges, our volunteer judges, yourselves, our classroom teachers who participate, and all of the students who've registered. So it's really a thrill to be starting off another contest season with you. Um, I'm going to be spending most of the next hour with you going over the basics of the program. So if it's new to you, we hope this will give you everything you need to feel confident getting started. If it's many times around, 18 times, 20 times, we have some people who have been with us a long time. I hope it's a useful refresher. And if anything remains unclear, never hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to clarify, provide more information. So, as folks are signing in, I just want to let you all know that we are recording this session so that anybody who couldn't make it can review it later on. So just know if you're on camera, you may be seen on video. But pretty simply, we just really want to make this accessible for everybody. If at any time you have questions or want to comment on something, please use the chat freely. We'll keep an eye on it as best I can. And I think what I'll do is just jump right in and get us started to make the best use of our time. So, welcome to, oops, Welcome to New Jersey History Day. So, for those who are first timers, and we really appreciate you jumping in, I want to just give a little brief overview of what this program is. New Jersey History Day is the state's affiliate or the state chapter, essentially, of the national program, National History Day. It's a 51-year-old program as of this year. We celebrated the 50th last year. So it's really a time-honored program. And it has been operating in New Jersey almost as long as it has existed. We were one of the earliest chapters to start in the 80s. So it's terrific that we're still going strong and even growing. This year we have, I think, almost 1,300 students signed up, which is a high in the last 10 years, kind of coming back from a little COVID slump. So we're really thrilled to see those numbers growing as strongly as they are. The program itself, it's very highly regarded by partners such as the American Historical Association, the Library of Congress, lots of people in the history and learning space. It's a rigorous program. It is quite an achievement for students who participate, and we're proud to keep those standards high and help maintain the quality of the program together. It's open to students in middle and high school, so sixth grade on up. And it's structured around the notion of project-based learning. So students are conducting their own historical research and developing a research project to share with us. They do all of the work themselves. They're conducting their own research, forming their own thesis, making their own arguments. So they have a high degree of ownership. Students in this program are doing real history. The goal of the program is to get them into the practice of doing what historians do, academic historians, with primary and secondary sources, and doing all the thinking and synthesis that goes with that. It's a big program. About 500,000 students a year take part across the nation and the world. It operates in the US, all of the US territories, and even an international chapter. And the real highlight of the program is the contest experience, which is what you're all a part of. And we are truly grateful. I will say this a lot, and you'll hear it multiple times, but it is no less true. The judges really are the heart of the History Day program because the thing that you are contributing is the key to making it valuable for students, making it a meaningful event, and giving them an experience that they will literally remember for the rest of their lives. Students can remember with great clarity what their judging experiences were like and what they learned from you. So we're really happy to have you play that role once again. Let's see here. I'm trying to advance my slides and seeing that perhaps. There we go. My screen went to sleep. So, just a quick note to say thanks to those who sponsor us. We are supported by the New Jersey Historical Commission and William Patterson University, where I work from. We also receive significant support from the Amistad Commission of New Jersey. I know we have some participants with that group here. They are terrific support, Council for the Humanities, and our three campus partners. So these campuses host History Day programs, and it's a great way for them to expose students to their own history programs and their academic offerings. So we're grateful to them. So today we're going to go over the role of the judges, the structure of the contest, how to evaluate the entries that students are going to present to you, a little bit about the student interviews, and how to rank and offer feedback to the students. And then if we have any questions, we'll go over that together at the end. So I'm going to begin by talking a bit about the theme. Every year, History Day, National History Day, sets a theme for the contest, and this theme goes across all the contests all around the world, all around the nation. And the theme exists to help focus students' interest, to help them pick a topic, kind of narrow the world of possible topics for them, and help them figure out what they might want to say about their topic or develop a thesis. We want students to be thinking, to be analyzing information, to be doing the interpretive work of history. So the theme helps to make that vast opportunity to speak about any number of topics a little bit more comprehensible. This year's theme is aligned with the America 250th celebration, so it's Revolution, Reaction, and Reform. And the theme is explained in more detail at the link you can see here at the National History Day website. There's a page for the theme, which allows you to download a theme booklet. So there's an essay about what revolution, reaction, and reform, what those concepts mean, how students might look at them through various historical events. And that may help you kind of prepare yourself to see how students are interpreting the theme. One of the questions that often comes up with the theme is if the theme has multiple parts, do students need to address every part in their project? The answer is no, but you should look for completeness. So if a student has a topic that should involve all three elements of revolution, reaction, and reform, they should address that in their project. But if they've chosen something where they're really looking, for example, at reform, and they're not considering the other two, then that is acceptable. So there are really a wide range of possibilities within this theme, but it's quite energetic. And so we have found, as I'm looking at the early entries, that they really deal with some exciting, often world-changing events in big and small ways. The students who participate, you will be seeing them at the contest at the end of what's been a month's or even year-long journey for many of them. A lot of our school participants begin their National History Day projects in the fall, maybe even as soon as the school year starts. So the teachers are guiding them into understanding the theme, selecting their topic, beginning to figure out where to go to do their research, what sources to look for. They're being supported in doing their analysis, really trying to understand their topic and make a historical argument from it. They also take time to build their projects out, whether it's an exhibit that they physically construct, a live performance that they script write, costume, do set design. So lots of creative elements. And then they bring that project into the competition. So we're seeing them for just a few minutes, but it's the pinnacle of months of hours of lots of input and lots of work on the part of students and teachers. So I say that just to kind of put in perspective that even though it's a brief interaction that you have with them, it represents so much investment of time, and every bit of energy is really focused on the moment that they get to present to you. Students typically at many schools will have a preliminary competition within their school. Sometimes it's a showcase where they bring their projects out for a first run. Sometimes it's legitimately a contest where only a few students will advance. But where our program comes in as New Jersey History Day is with our regional contests. So most of you, I believe, will be judging for a regional contest. We have three of them in New Jersey. And I'll say what those are in a moment. And then those from the regional contests who qualify at the highest levels will move on to our state or affiliate contest, the New Jersey History Day contest. That is in May at William Patterson University. And that is a very exciting day. It's an achievement simply to go to the state level and to be counted among those highest achieving projects at the state. But also those who rank highest at the state contest have the opportunity to attend National History Day, the national contest, which is in College Park, Maryland, right outside DC. And it is a huge happening of 3,000 or so students from all over the nation and world competing together. So as you can imagine, it's a very dynamic, exciting, high-level contest experience. And every year we've been able to bring 50 to 60 students from New Jersey to that competition. And again, it's a very memorable experience. So you're part of this journey. This year, another 50 or 60 students will come from New Jersey, and you are likely to be seeing their projects out in their first showing at these contests. So your feedback and input will really make them readier for that level of competition. Our three regionals are divided a little bit differently. We're not a nice even geography, but we have a southern region, the red, which competes at Rutgers Camden University. We have a sort of central region that competes at Monmouth University, and our northern counties compete at St. Elizabeth in Morristown. And as I said, the results from all of those three regionals those highest qualifying students go on to our state contest at William Patterson. So that's the big picture and the big framework for what's happening. But at any single contest, your role as a judge is really what makes it all happen. So I'll just describe a little bit about why the contest uses volunteer judges and what it is that we look to you to provide. Um, our volunteer judges, as you saw in the chat, come from all walks of life. We love people who bring some expertise and experience in a related field. So we have lots of educators, we have lots of historians, museum people, archives and librarians, people from professors. So we've got lots of people who come from a field that's very related to this work. However, you don't have to be from one of those fields to bring something of interest, to bring something of value to students. Really, all you need is a love of history and research yourself, a desire to help students succeed, really genuine excitement at seeing their learning. And our goal in the contest is, yes, to rank and select students to move to the next level, but also overarching that is to really help them love the process of history, help them fall in love with research, with learning, with examining sources, with the excitement of discovery and that thrill that all of you know that you get when you are able to tell a story that means something to you in a way that connects to other people. So we want them to continue on that path, and that's the main thing that we look to this contest to do. We want to show respect for every student, regardless of their level of achievement or their topic or their background. For every single one, we want this to be a positive and memorable experience. The other very important thing is that we want everyone to get constructive feedback because no matter how excellent, there's always room to improve. So from, the very simplest projects to the most high level, we want to provide feedback that's targeted to help that student reach the next level of performance. So we're hoping to help them find the things that they can do to become better the next time they undertake a project like this. We value fairness greatly, so we want every project to receive equal consideration. And we're going to share with you today some of the tools we have that help us do that. And finally, just create a great day and happy memories where students, even those walking away who did not take home honors and awards, will feel like they had a fantastic time. They learned something. They got to meet some new people and they found that their work was appreciated. So, above all, these are the outcomes we're looking for. This, in the world of education, we think about this project-based learning where students choose the topic and do their own research and can go in many different directions. That's authentic learning. It's learning of the kind that we do as adults on the job in our everyday lives, and that we want to help students learn to do so that they can become more effective citizens, can be better prepared for college, better prepared for the career paths they might take. And your role in that as a judge is the assessment side. You're providing an authentic assessment. So that means you're not giving them a letter grade or a score on a paper. What you're doing is giving them a fully rounded feedback on the work that they've done with the goal of helping them improve. So again, much more like the kinds of feedback we try to get and give in our own working lives. My goodness, this wants to go to sleep every time. So, the structure of the contest. You will all be joining us. Many of you will be joining us in person at the contest events. So, I'm going to default to talking about that. But we also have folks with us today who will judge virtually online. And I'm going to be following up from today with some email information for those judging online for papers and websites. But either way, much of this remains the same. So the way we handle judging is that we want everyone to be in a team. Judges work in teams so that you can confer, you can add to each other's perspectives, and you can arrive at a consensus. So our judge teams are typically 2 to 3 people. We try very hard not to have any student judged by only one person, and 3 is a really nice number. So we aim for that if we can. So your team of 2 or 3 people will meet and work together to judge a set of student entries. Each team is going to have a designated captain, and the captain's role is really to help with the procedure of the contest. So basically, help orient the other judges to the process if they're new, and also to ensure that the paperwork is filed correctly and that we have captured all the information from the rankings that we need. We typically will seek to put people in the captain role if they are an experienced judge already. So if you're new, please don't worry, you probably will not be asked to be captain your first time out. In Our program has categories that I'll get into in a bit, and your team will be probably one of many teams judging in that same category, but you won't all be seeing each other's entries. You're going to have your own small group of student entries. So others will be judging documentaries, for example, but each team within documentaries will look at its own batch of student entries. And from each team, from that batch, you will send two or three of the top entries on to the state competition. So it can be excruciating, as you can imagine, because typically a batch of entries might be eight or so, and that means a lot of careful winnowing to select the ones that do have the strongest competition, the chance to compete at state. My goodness. I have yet to figure out which magic button I'm pressing to make my slide go forward. When you join us at the contest, we invite you to arrive early. We start our days at 8 a.m. at the contest, and we serve you a hot breakfast, which is one of the nice things about the program. We feed you well. We have hot breakfast and a good lunch, plenty of coffee. So we do want to take care of you. And in that morning time, when we meet starting at 8, we do a quick refresher on the judging process, eat breakfast, and we give you a folder. And within your folder, there is material that you'll be able to go over, basically any resource material that you're going to need to judge. So I will be sending examples of this stuff, but you will also have it printed out in hand on the day of the event. Um, for those who are judging online, websites and papers, you're going to be logging into the contest website to review everything on the screen. So websites and papers, you'll view the papers as PDFs, the websites on the web, and you will do everything in the same way that I'm going to describe for the other categories. For our in-person categories, exhibit, performance, and documentary, these are the steps that we'll go through. So when you get there in the morning, you'll preview your schedule. You will have a list of the entries that you're going to see, and each entry has a time. So you may see it running from, 10 a.m. to noon. Every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes, you'll see a new entry. Um, some categories, exhibits mainly, have the opportunity to go preview the exhibits before the students are there, which can help. But the others, you're basically just going to be reviewing the project titles. And at the start time, you'll go into a judging room. The documentary and performance judges will have spaces that you'll stay put, and the students will come to you sequentially to present their work. For the exhibits, the students set up their exhibits in a big open room, and judges move from one to the other according to time. So we make sure you meet up with your students at the time that is designated. So when the students come in, you'll be viewing their projects, and starting after their project presentation, you'll interview them. It's highly recommended, no matter what category you're judging, that you take notes and keep some handwritten notes, or your iPad, whatever you prefer to use, on every project you see. This becomes really important because even if you have a really sharp memory, by the time you get to project number 6 and project number 7, things start to jumble. The students, what they said, the topics, the eras, that can be difficult to recall in detail. So making a few notes as you go is extremely helpful. After you've seen all of the projects in your batch of projects, you will all return to the judge's room. We have in our headquarters room, and begin the deliberation with your team. We ask you to mainly do that after seeing all the projects, not only so students won't overhear you deliberating, but also so that you can get a sense of the whole field before you come back and really think about which ones will advance and which will not. We will be giving you materials to use in your judging, a rubric or criteria sheet that I'll describe in a little bit. And you'll go over that together. discuss which ones you thought were the strongest, and then talk about where each one has areas to improve. And as I mentioned before, especially at the regional level, every single project has areas to improve. Even if it was spectacular, they have the opportunity to revise their project before they take it to state. So we want to give them something to work on to make it even better. Because if they're fortunate enough to go on to nationals, again, that level of competition will be that much higher. We want them to be as prepared as possible. And then together, you'll complete the evaluation forms and write comments for each entry. And the comments are really an essential component of the evaluation. And finally, we'll ask the captains to submit the final ranking and rubrics. I see a couple things in the chat here, so let me check. Um, all good. Oh, yes, Diane, great tip. Diane notes that it can be useful if you're judging exhibits to take photos of the exhibit so that when you're back in the judges' room, you may want to look at those photos, zoom in, and remind yourself which ones were which. Great tip. So how do you evaluate these entries? We've got a system, don't worry, and it is very detailed. So I'm going to break it down with you and make sure it makes sense so you're ready to tackle it when we get together. So the first thing to know is that every entry in History Day has three parts. The first part is the project itself, the thing that you are there to see. So that might be it'll be something in one of the five categories. As you heard, they are documentary, exhibit, a paper, performance, and website. So that's the first set of divisions is what category you're judging. And then we divide those for the purposes of competition into divisions. So we have a junior and a senior category. Juniors are sixth through eighth graders, seniors are ninth through 12th. That way they're competing against roughly their own age mates. So hopefully it's not too uneven. And then we also have two versions of the group size, individual competitors and groups. So groups may be anywhere from 2 to 5 students who've collaborated on a project. So we separate those out so that groups are competing with groups, individuals with individuals. That helps keep it fair. So you'll be assigned to a subset of these categories. So for example, you might arrive and be assigned junior group documentary or senior individual exhibit. It will tell you specifically which category, division, and group type that you'll be judging. The second part of the entry is called the process paper. It's about a 2-page paper, 500 words maximum, where students describe their research process. And we ask for this in order to support their learning, kind of their metacognition, their own understanding of their own learning about how they have improved in their historical research skills. So we'll look into the process paper. If they're smart, they will use that real estate to tell us some things about what they've learned, sources that they've discovered, tactics they use to conduct their research, overcoming obstacles in, for example, finding enough sources on a topic, developing their argument, trying things out, discarding them, and going in other directions. So this is a really important tool whenever you have projects that are roughly equal in their presentation, going to the process paper to see what the student went through in order to produce that project can really help you narrow down which ones you might give the edge to. So students who are really able to document their process and tell you a bit more about their choice making, decision making, and their research skills that they've employed will probably differentiate themselves from their competitors. Then the third part of the entry is the annotated bibliography. Every category is required to do an annotated bibliography. It's a list of all of the sources that they used. We ask students to separate this into primary and secondary sources, and I'll mention a little bit more about that later. We also want them to annotate it because we're asking them to think about how they used each of those sources and how it helped them understand their topic. So there should be a couple of sentences for each entry, not a paragraph of 10 sentences, not nothing, but somewhere in between there that explains how they found that source helpful in their work. So, in essence, you'll see the project itself and then this process paper and bibliography. And both of those additional papers are really essential in helping you get the full picture of the student's work. And they will present them to you. Either they will hand them to you at the beginning of their presentation or give it to you to take back with you to the judging room. So the project's goal is to have students make an evidence-based historical argument. This is really the heart of the History Day work. We're asking them to look across the historical evidence in primary sources and elsewhere, and to then perform their own analysis of that evidence to create an argument. They are trying to stake a claim, make a point, or advance a thesis. So they're going to take their information, run it through their analysis, and turn it into a statement that could be proved or supported with their evidence that is going to connect to the theme. So the students start way down from in the primary resources when they kind of know their topic, they begin looking for sources to work from. But we as judges are coming in at the end of the process looking for their argument. And so that's where we start this process. So how do we evaluate? How can we, turn apples and oranges into apples and apples so that you can make an evaluation of each project? When you first look at History Day, it seems impossible because you might have a project on the 1960s civil rights movement and a project on ancient China and a project on women's suffrage. And how do you judge across such different content areas? And the answer that time has come up with and the program has developed over the years is that we're really looking at historical thinking skills and process skills. So we're not so much evaluating them on the content itself as on the work that they've done to support their argument. So the tools that we give you to do that with are this sheet on the left that we call the criteria or the rubric. And on the right, an additional sheet that you'll all have of specific things to look for in each category. With the criteria, each entry we ask you to judge with some weight to it. And 80% of the weight is really about the quality of the research, the quality of the history being done. So only 20% comes down to the clarity of the presentation, which is qualities that go with their category, like the documentary film category. We are looking clarity, meaning is it, are the visuals of high enough resolution? Is the narration clear to understand? Is it well sequenced and edited? Those kinds of things. And then their voice. How does their voice come through their personal style and their original thinking? So really, you can see that regardless of how brilliant looking and beautiful some of these projects will be, we're really placing most emphasis on the quality of the historical work that the students have done. So I'm going to break down the categories that you see down on the left in this green bar. I'm going to break down each one of those so we can talk a little bit about what it means for History Day to think about that category. So moving forward, our annual theme, which we mentioned above, revolution, reaction, and reform, this is the big idea that we should see running through all the projects. Somehow every project should talk about one or all of those things, revolution, reaction, and reform. The things that you should be looking for when you are judging those your projects is a connection to the theme. It should be clear and explicit that you see how it relates to the theme. And it should go beyond just using the word. So just saying something is a revolution, that word is useful, but their evidence should also show us how that thing is revolutionary or what was the reform. It should connect to the ideas deep in that concept. So we really want to see that students can articulate that connection both in their project itself and in their interview with you. They should have a pretty solid understanding of why it fits the theme. So that's a first and important criteria. Okay. Process paper. Blah, blah, blah. So Paula asks a couple of great questions here. Jim is asking about AI, and Jim, I do have a slide about AI that I'll get to touch on that. And Paula, you're is asking about the rules, and for example, the 500 words in the process paper. We give the students and teachers a rule book, which is very, very detailed, really goes through minutia about what the rules are to create that even playing field. By the time they come to the regional contest, almost all the entries will be in compliance with the rules. However, every now and then something gets through that may not be. And at the regional contest, what we want you to do is bring that to the attention of the judging coordinators, because they'll be able to make a determination on whether that is a disqualifying problem or what we call minor infraction, which just means please take this back and reduce your word count before the next contest. So at this level, we're not as hard and fast. And we don't want you to be in the position of rule enforcer because that role really comes down to students and teachers. So we want you to focus more on the level of the quality of the project. So I hope that makes sense. And we can discuss that more um, in the question answer period. Whoops. So after the theme, the students will be presenting something on a topic. And some topics we want you to be ready for a huge wide range of topics. So things to know about the topics in History Day. First, that they can be in any subject area at all, any form, any historical domain. So it can be local history, even family history. It could be global history. It could be ancient times. It could be 20th century, possibly even 21st, though we may not want that because of this next criteria. We want their topics to be something that the students can demonstrate both the short-term impact or effect of whatever the event or idea was that they're presenting, but also it has to be long enough into the past that there's a sense of how it matters in the long term. We want their topic to be, we want them to argue for the significance of their topic. And sometimes things are just too recent in the past for us to understand how significant they are. Um, our judging coordinator, Joan, uses SpaceX as an example. SpaceX is really interesting, but are we far enough out from the development of that type of space travel to understand the long-term impact? Probably not yet. However, students interested in that might be able to tell us a bit more of the history of space travel going back into deeper into the 20th century. So we want to think about that if a topic feels that it's more recent. Yeah. Um, we're going to give them plenty of material, Diane, to see what they do in 2056. Yeah, so roughly we tend to lean into a 20 to 30 year timeline. It's not a hard and fast rule. If the student's argument is good and if they can demonstrate long-term impact in under 20 years, we accept that. But we tend to encourage them to look for something with enough sources and enough critical review that they have things to draw on for their argument over time. We want them to be able to produce evidence. This is the other part of something that's older will have had more written about it. So they have more choices for evidence. Things that are more recent might have thinner evidence. Also, topics that are hard to find sources on may have thinner evidence. But we really want them to do a great job finding and presenting evidence. I'm thinking of a project last year that students did on it was a story from the Dominican Republic about three women resistors to an authoritarian leader who lost their lives. And the challenge those students faced was that most of their sources were in Spanish. So the students actually had to engage in translation of the primary sources in order to bring them into the project. And that was a great example of where the sources weren't, yes, it was an excellent project. The sources were not necessarily ones that were easy to surface, but they did find them and prepared them and brought them into the project. So it did very well. So we really want to see that the students are doing that and bringing those sources forward, even if it's hard to find, showing you that they have tried and that they've searched down every avenue they could counts for a lot. And then lastly, that the students have freedom of choice as to their topic. That means they can really choose anything and everything, and they do. It is a thrill for me every year to walk down the exhibit aisles and just see the range that students do. It's everything, sports, video gaming, pop culture, political and intellectual history, theater arts, the circus, technology. It really can be anything at all. So we want to go in with a really open mind. Not everything will be capital H history that we would find in a history textbook from our school days. Everything has a history. Everything can be written about through a historical lens. So we want students to see the world that way and see that anything that they have a passion for can be explored through the tools of history. So be ready to see that range, be excited by that, and also just be aware a little bit too if it's a topic that you personally don't love, or maybe, have, are just not warm to for whatever reason, to create a little bit of wall of separation in your judging role so that you can judge it on its merits and let that student passion lead them to present and um, let them be as effective as they can. So that's another reason that we look to the historical thinking criteria as the basis for judging. So we don't get too clouded by our own ideas of what we think is valid history. So there's going to be a wide range, and we like that. Um, Moving on. So let's talk a little bit about historical argument. So the historical argument of a project is the point of the project, the statement that it's putting forward. Um, it's also what we might call a thesis, we might call a claim, but it's the centerpiece of the project. It's the layer that is fundamental to everything the students do. It's important that the historical argument not be just a statement of fact that something happened. It shouldn't be just the American Revolution was a war for independence from the British colonial government. That's an established fact, so it can't really make a historical argument. An argument is going to go beyond that to make a statement about how that happened, why that happened, what it meant that it happened, and it's going to be a provable statement, something that can be supported with evidence. It also does not have to be labeled. Some students will call it out either by writing argument in their exhibit or saying it aloud when they present, but it does not have to be, as long as you can discern that that's the argument. And there's a nice tip here that when you get back in the room to deliberate with other judges, one really great idea is to go through your list and say, what was the argument in this piece, in this project? Because if you can all agree that you found the argument and you know what it was, that's a really good starting point for your critique. If you don't agree and if you're having trouble finding the argument, that's a signal that that probably will not score highly, because the argument did not come through clearly. Wide research is another criteria. So that we define that as the variety of sources that students use. One of the goals of History Day teaching is to get students beyond any single type of source. So there are some projects that will come our way where students have gone online and they've found credible, good websites and made their project, and they've cited essentially everything from primary to secondary sources, all from web sources. That can be okay. But we really want to see them exploring other types of media and every type of source available. Even if they're going at it through Google, are they coming up with books, articles from journals or newspapers, diaries, eyewitness accounts, photographs, posters, visual sources, um, handwritten letters, those kinds of things. So we want to see them go as expansively as they can, court documents to find the things that may be most relevant to their story. Um, so please look for this. This is something that can be help differentiate a qualifier from one that won't be moving on. Is did they go above and beyond and trying to find sources beyond, the basic? So we want to be looking for the quality and variety of those sources. There's nothing wrong with them researching on the internet. And I always like to call out, as you all know, that the internet's a big place and some websites are not particularly credible, but we also find primary sources on the National Archives website, the Library of Congress. Many news sites and books are archived on the web. So students can be drawing information from the web, but that doesn't mean it originated on the web. So we don't want to penalize them for that, but we want to see a variety. The next criterion is primary sources. And our definition of that is sources that are connected directly to an event by the same time or the same person who witnessed it. So that can be, more eyewitness accounts, speeches given at an event. The I Have a Dream speech is a primary source text. Images, photographs from the event, 3D artifacts. Some of the students may have gone to a museum or historical society and found an object that they've interrogated and included in their project. Oral history interviews from people who witnessed an event. All of those things can be primary sources. The critical thing is that they were generated at the time of the event or by someone who was present for the event. This is really essential because, as the historians here will testify, this is the raw material of history. Primary sources are what we make history out of. We can know the timelines of history, but we really gain information by looking at the evidence of things that have happened. So we want to see that students have looked at that evidence themselves and are incorporating it right into their project. Okay. Context. Historical context is another criteria you'll be rating them on. We define that as showing an understanding of the wider surrounding of the event that they're dealing with. So it's their way of telling us that they get what came before and what came after. So if you're arguing something is a revolution, like the discovery of cosmic background radiation at Bell Labs here in New Jersey in the 1950s, revolutionized telecommunications, revolutionized our understanding of the Big Bang. It did, but they need to also tell you, well, what did we think before that? What was the theory before that? How did that become a revolution? What did it change? What did people understand about space before that? So that might mean that they need to talk a bit about the state of science and the discussion of the Big Bang versus other theories that were prevalent before that discovery. They might need to talk about the context of the Cold War and the space race. So they're going to need to help up paint a picture of the world at the time of the event they're discussing and help us understand how their argument comes out of that world. So it can be a lot of projects will go really deep down into a topic, but without showing us why it's significant because of the change that it represented. And also, some things are very interesting and they can be sharing context, other things that are going on at the time. A project about the civil rights movement might mention that there's also, a counterculture movement going on. There might also be women's liberation going on. The question to ask when they're bringing those kinds of contexts in is this relevant to your core argument? Are you discussing how those things relate to civil rights, or are they just contemporaneous? Because if they're just happening at the same time, but they're not that relevant, that might not be worth including. So that's some feedback you might give if it feels off topic. Okay, continuing on. Another really significant criteria is multiple perspectives. So by this, we mean that we're being asked by the student to look at this topic from more than one point of view. And this is incredibly important in history work because we want to show the full span of thinking about that event at the time. So, particularly with things that might involve differences of opinion or differences of motivation or perspective. Can be particularly hard for students, and I'm sure that our educators that are with us today can nod and smile when they hear that because our world has grown more and more strong in expressing opinion and expressing personal points of view which have great validity. But as we're looking back in history, we want to understand why things happened the way they did. We need to understand what different people thought about those things that influenced how they turned out. So, for example, I can recall judging a paper last year about a coal miner strike in Colorado. Fantastic paper. However, the weakness in it was that it discussed everything from the miners' point of view, their legitimate grievances, the harms they experienced, but sort of dismissed the mine owners' point of view. Whether or not we agree with them or we think they did right, they need to be represented because we want to understand, well, why didn't they just be nicer to their workers? Why did they value other outcomes more than their worker experience? So to be complete, a project does need to talk about different points of view. And not everyone agreed on everything in history, just like we don't today. So this is incredibly helpful for students to explore and understand that perspectives vary and things happen because of difference in perspective. They don't need to give equal time. So if students doing a project on enslavement does not need to give equal time to the perspective of the owners or what have you, but it needs to talk about what their ideas and motivations were and use primary sources if possible. And it's true that as we talk about these issues in history, we may not agree with or believe that those actions of people in the past were right or correct, but we just want to present them as influential in the event itself. So we want to make sure that students are doing that work. And this is one of the valuable things they take away from their projects. Another criteria, historical accuracy. So important here is that we don't expect you all to be expert on all the range of topics that kids are going to bring for your perusal. You don't have to be checking their facts on everything, but what we want is to see that there are no egregious mistakes, serious errors that leap right out at you, that the information is credible, seems like it's well sourced and reasonable, and that it doesn't leave anything major out. So be thinking about that. If this something is accurate, it's going to appear to you that it's pretty complete and whole and doesn't have any major gaps or egregious errors. If you do see errors, mischaracterizations, outright mistakes, those things are important to call out in your comments because they may hold the student back at another level. And they may get them to, by noting that, they may turn back to find that better fact and revise their work. And next we have significance. This is the impact of the topic. What does it mean? Why does it matter that this thing happened? So we think about that in short-term and long-term impact. Some students will call those out for you very overtly, but others will do it in a more artistic way. So what we want to be looking for is what were the immediate results, and then how did it change the way we look at the past? Significance. And then, so those are our historical quality criteria, and that is where the 80% of the score should come from. So that's really where to spend your time and to be most rigorous. Then our clarity component is 20% of the evaluation. This is the back page of the paper. It's shorter. So it will ask you questions about how well the students presented their work, their topic. There will be a short list. You can see a short list there of criteria that go with their category. So for a documentary, it needs to be 10 minutes in length or less, for example, or an exhibit will have certain size. So these are usually they are not make or break, but you can check them off if you see something that's really out of bounds. That's important to note. This also is an important place to make notes about the student voice. Do you hear their originality coming through? Do you hear their own unique perspective? Do you see their style? This is where David called out in the chat when the presentation is great. We do love great presentation. It can be wonderful to see the costuming, the gorgeous exhibit design, 3D models, interactivity. All those things are wonderful, but we want to balance that with student voice, so their originality, and we also don't want to give that a greater weight than the historical quality piece. Worth praise, but not the make or break thing. Oh, and I kind of already talked about student voice, where their ideas come through. So that's a way of breaking down. I'll skip this slide because it's just kind of an example of how student voice might come through. A way of breaking down that rubric sheet. You're going to be able to choose from a range on a scale from not evident, meaning it's just not there at all, to exemplary, meaning it's really, really well expressed and it leads the pack. This is where there's a lot of variability for us judges because what is proficient to some of us might be developing to others of us. So we ask you to really look at the text inside each of the descriptions, and you'll notice that it says the words keywords are consistently, mostly, somewhat, or limited. So we want you to kind of aim to the one that feels most appropriate, not based on the other projects that you've seen, but based on these principles. And this cute little pie graphic sort of gives you an idea how to judge those. So if something's happening consistently, you see it everywhere in the project, in the process paper, the bibliography, the presentation, the project itself. If it's minimal, there's a lot of pie missing. If it's mostly there, there's a lot of pie, but there are a few things that they can improve. So be thinking and try to work with your team to arrive at agreement on that difference between consistently, mostly, somewhat, and limited. Here's a great example that you can use, and I will share these slides after so you can look at them in more detail if you like. But I think you can see by reading across the level of detail and the specificity of each of these statements gives you a good example of what exemplary looks like versus developing versus novice. Looking for specifics, detail, and even length. So project rules, that's the part I called out at the bottom. You can review those very quickly with your projects. Usually they are not very out of compliance. And then I mentioned what happens if you see something that doesn't seem to fit the rules. So we think about these as either minor infractions or major infractions. A minor infraction is not going to make a difference in their ranking. So you can move those projects on and just make a note that your word count was a little bit over, or your exhibit is a few inches bigger than it should have been. Those kinds of things. Or yeah, missing information. Your annotated bibliography did not have annotations of sufficient length. A major infraction is something that would give a project an unfair advantage. We don't see very many of these. And I would say if you're seeing this in your batch of projects, before you make a determination, please come to the judging coordinators in the judges room and let them know what you're seeing, because they will probably want to go look at that with you or at least look at the materials with you and help come to a decision as to whether that will advance. We don't want what we don't want to do is to have students using additional space to make more points or get more information in, because then they're not on an even playing field with others. But we also are not in the business of trying to throw projects out that kids worked hard on. So we're going to use our judgment in that case. And then the disqualifications, very, very rare, very, very rare. And as you can see, these are pretty significant problems. And you probably wouldn't see them in the contest. If we have any inkling that this is happening, those projects won't make it to your view. So, in other words, we hope you don't worry much about qualifying or disqualifying or strict rules compliance. But if you have any question about whether something's inbounds or out, please come to the coordinators. Now, somebody asked about AI. Oh, and to respond to the chat, Lisa, yes, I will be sending everyone, probably tomorrow, I'll send this recording out along with samples of the rubric and other tips. So you'll have a few materials coming your way in email that you can take a look at ahead of time. And it really is worth doing because the day of the event, it's busy and active, and you'll probably be happy that you're more familiar if you're not looking at it the first time you sit down. So AI, boy, is this the thing we're surrounded by now. And of course, it's come to play in classrooms, on campuses, and in History Day as well. So History Day has developed some guidance for students, and this is shared with teachers and students in the process. They are allowed to use AI in certain ways for their project. So as you can see, this guidance is sent to them. They can use it to brainstorm ideas, to suggest resources they should look for. They can use it to help them refine their writing and grammar. And they can use it to help them understand a source. So it gives them some examples. What they can't use it for is writing the project for them, making a film for them, which AI can do now, making charts and graphs for them, analyzing for them. We want their brains to be doing the thinking. That's where the learning and growth comes from. So we don't want them to use an AI analysis as their own work. Um, Also, we warn them that AI is unreliable. As you probably all know and have seen, AI gives you what you want, and so it will make up content if it can't find anything that suits exactly what you've asked for. So we want to warn them about that as a risk of research. So these students are familiar with AI guidance. And then for judges, what we do to try to ensure that AI is not playing a big role is we try to assess their understanding of their project in the interview. One of the reasons we do interviews is to get a sense of what command students have over their material. So if they're seeming fuzzy or uncertain, then maybe that is indicating that they don't quite know that as deeply as they would if they had researched it and done that analysis themselves. So asking meaningful questions in the interview is really important, and that will, I hope, give you the confidence that they did their own work. The corollary to that, as you see in the red, is please believe what they say. Joan, our past judging coordinator, used to say, before we had AI, we had parents. And I really agree with that. Sometimes the coaching or the work of parents might show up in an NHD project. So this isn't really new in this way. We always want to know how students understand their own work, and we want to see them represent their work as having, show that they've grown in their abilities. So we don't want to accuse them of cheating, accuse them of having work done by AI that they say they did. We're not in the business of doing that at all. Um, but you can, this suggests some language. I was not always sure which parts of your project were your own words, that kind of thing. But another thing to keep in mind is that every now and then you'll come across a project and think, there's no way a 10th grader did this. There's no way a seventh grader did this. But they do, they routinely do. These students they've been working on it for months. They've really polished their projects. They've made them the best they can be. And some of them have outstanding talent, and we don't want to penalize that in any way. So we want to bring trust to this experience and bring confidence that they have done their work and can represent it. And if you're not sure, again, just ask the judging coordinators for some guidance. Okay. Um, Oh, and this is a mention for this year. There are some sources that have gone offline that students might have been using, things from the National Archives or Library of Congress or from certain museums, national park sites. Students might have been using them and had them taken down. So we want to be aware when you're looking at the bibliographies. We ask them to put a date of access in the bibliography. That's becoming particularly important because if you want, for example, to verify a source they used and you can't find it online, um, we want to just use the principle of trust that they did find it at some point, because much of that might not be available at this point. So just to mention that some of those things might have shifted, be it a different URL or have been taken down. So, as we're coming up on the end of the hour, I just want to say quickly a few things about the interview. This is the most memorable thing for students. They work up to this moment. It's a big, big deal. So we want to get the most from it and give them the best experience. The interviews technically do not affect the rank. We are judging based on the project and the written materials, but the interviews do matter, both to verify that students did their own work, as we just talked about, but we also want to give them the opportunity to present their work in their words and explore the topic with them. What we don't want to do in an interrogation is grill them on their understanding. Remember, it's about them and not you. We have had judges sometimes in the past who are experts on a topic who would, go really deep into, well, why did General Sherman do this instead of, and if it's not part of the student's project, it doesn't bear on the interview. We're really using this time to explore their process, how they built that analysis, their understanding. We want them to be comfortable. They're going to be nervous, of course. So we want to start out easy. Tell us how you got interested in this. How did you pick your topic? What excited you about this topic? And then go on to some more challenging questions about the content itself. And always ask at the end, is there anything else you wanted us to know? Or something like that, so that if you didn't get to the thing they really wanted to share, that they have a chance to do that. And finally, in the interview, we want to make everybody feel really comfortable. So we want to avoid any personal questions. So we're not asking students what school they're from, how old they are, their religious background, their cultural background, their family. That's just not part of the contest. We don't want to pry into any personal detail. Um, we want to be mindful that you're not alone with students. We always pair you. If you find that one of you has to run out, let us know. We'll come send another adult in. So we're always maintaining safety for everybody. And while you're with students and they're presenting, we don't want to share any of your critiques or your ranking or anything. All the deliberation should happen away from students so that everything about this experience is just presenting, answering questions, and walking away feeling positive. With some categories, there will be spectators. So, performances and documentaries, people are invited in to watch. So, you may have an audience behind you. The audience does not get the chance to ask questions. That's just for judges. So, they will be quiet, watch respectfully. Again, if there's any trouble, you can let us know and we'll come and help you manage that. When exhibits are being reviewed, it will just be judges and students in the exhibit room. Parents, teachers won't be in there at that time. Finally, your ranking and feedback, where where you did the evaluation for each project, you're responding to that project specifically. The ranking is the last piece, and that's where you're deciding which of those two or three entries are going forward. Um, so we really want you to provide a lot of written detail in the comments for students. They cannot wait to get these comments back. They read them, they value them, they ask me questions about what they mean if they don't understand. That is your greatest gift to the students is the comments that you write. Please make use of this box. Try to write substantial comments. We want to avoid things that are just like, great job, or that was really interesting. Give them some really specific feedback, like you could have used additional primary sources about the Panama Canal construction or whatever it might be. Provide some guidance for how they can improve as well. The comment sandwich is the way that we like to structure comments. So, start off with some kind words, then get in your recommendations for improvement, and then end with some kind words. I learned a lot from your project. This exposed me to an area of history I didn't know much about and has raised my curiosity. Just some nice affirmative feedback is really valuable. Yeah, this is great. Lots of great chat material here. So thank you. And I see, and it can't be said enough, the interview with the judges to students, that is History Day. It is. The prizes are nice, advancing is nice, but that moment where they're really sharing with you as peers who share a love of history. And that is such a meaningful moment in their own self-concept as scholars and learners, that I know it stays with people for quite a long time. And oh, yes. Oh, Stephen, thank you. The students who became a judge because he met the students who researched Seabrook Farms last year. And you can testify how impressive the students' work is. When you meet them, you will feel the significance of the moment to them. So we really want to keep that just a positive moment for everybody. I think we're coming back to the end. Yeah. So I know we've gone over a bit, and I thank you all for your patience, but I want to stop talking now and open the floor to any questions, comments, responses from anyone at all. And I really do appreciate your patience in going through that. And I will share this back out so you can go over it slower and become more familiar with it. Um, and I see, while we have you, Wendy, you made a terrific comment. I would like to introduce people to Wendy Hurwitz Kushner, who's with us tonight, and Priscilla Taylor, who I think is with us too. Priscilla and Wendy are joining us this year as judging coordinators, so they'll be with you in the judges' rooms during these contests. Both of them are quite experienced History Day teachers, so they know it from the inside and will now be supporting the judges in helping you do your work with the students. Teresa asked, where do we meet at Monmouth University? I'm trying to remember the name of the student center where we meet. I will send you full instructions on this. It's where their food court is. It's very easy to find and very adjacent to parking, but I'm just not remembering the name of the hall. So please look for it in the email. Thank you, Steph. Thank you. The Rebecca Stafford Student Center. So you'll go right in the door there. We'll have signage to direct you where you need to go, and you'll come and join us for breakfast there and get started with our group. So Wendy's advice was try to turn negatives into suggestions. Students are sensitive. Try to remember back when you got the paper back with the red marks on it, and we want to keep them engaged and growing in their learning. So if you see a weakness or a lack, figure out how to turn it around and reframe it as something that they can grow with. A suggestion to strengthen your project would be ba ba ba. Just the phrasing can make a big difference.
Can I add one comment, Michelle, just
Please,
related to
please.
that? So, I had a student who submitted, I think it was a paper, and there were some typos in it. Not awful, but a certain amount. Um, and the judge was sure to point that out, which was fair. But it seemed like maybe the judge had read too many papers in one sitting because was the impatience came through. And also the judge criticized her with her typos and said, you even made a typo with your name. And this was a student who's South Asian background, and she has a first name and two last names, and one of the last names does have a lowercase letter, not a capital letter. And that's something that culturally we might not be aware of. But the way it was written was like, you even forgot to capitalize the one of the letters of your name, double or triple exclamation point. But no, she doesn't capitalize that part of her name. So just to be aware of that. So
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah. Yeah. And we have, every kind of student and student background in New Jersey. So it's important to be aware of those things. Any other questions, comments? If there's ever an incident, fainting or emotional incident. Yes. So Javier is asking what to do if something happens, any kind of incident, and things happen from time to time. We are fortunate in every setting that we do a contest in. We are in the context of this campus. And we will have a judging coordinator who's stationed in the judge's room, who's always there. We also have monitors around the buildings that are student volunteers or other people involved with the contest. So you can inform the nearest person to contact either the judging coordinator or myself, our campus host. So we will have methods to get help. So we'll let you know what that is. Yeah, go to a coordinator's the answer. I will be present at all the contests, and our coordinators can find me no matter where we are.
and
So,
please let the coordinators know what what our course of action should be
yes,
if that
yes, yes.
happens. Thanks.
Yes, and our campus host, for example, Monmouth, we have Melissa Ziobro, wonderful campus host, so she can be in touch immediately with campus police, security, any other issues. So we have support. So someone asked, Lynette asked, can you get documentation for time spent? The answer is yes. We offer 6 CEU hours for judging if you're an educator, so I can provide you that certificate. I also am happy to provide documentation for any other benefit you might receive for judging. I've done that for military service personnel who get community service credits. Really, anything you need, I'd be happy to document your participation to assist. Any other lingering questions? Well, great. It was wonderful seeing so many folks pop in for your refresher or your introduction. If it was new to you tonight, I know it's a lot, kind of comes at you fast. Don't worry, we will get you through it, and I know you're going to enjoy the day. It's really rewarding. And most judges tell me how inspiring it is to interact with so many young people who are serious about their work, who value their education and learning, who are curious and excited about what they're finding out. It really gives you hope for the future. And I know that you're going to enjoy it. So we appreciate you very much. And I look forward to meeting you, seeing you in person on the day of the event. Look for this presentation and other materials coming back to you in email, and never hesitate to reach out if you have a question. All right. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks.